Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our speaker series, Hope and Possibilities. My name is Monica, and I've been a member of Hope and Me for about 5 years now. I'm just going to introduce myself a little bit. As you may have seen in the short bio provided, my husband was bipolar, and my daughters have had significant mental health challenges throughout their teen years and a little bit into their 20s, but starting to see some light at the end of the rainbow. My younger sisters were also diagnosed with depression, and my dad has complex PTSD from having grown up in a war zone. What I found helps me continue to be supportive and positive is to grab onto those golden nuggets, those small moments of hope or happiness that show up even in the darkest times, and to always keep in mind that everyone is doing the best they can. Each of our panelists today, Carrie, Merle, and Jenny, will tell you their stories and their strategies for better mental health. So our first speaker of the night is Carrie. Carrie has had her own experiences with mental health issues, which motivated her to enroll in the Master of Social Work program at the University of Toronto. Carrie is also peer support volunteer at Hope and Me Mood Disorders Associations of Ontario. Carrie, please go ahead.
Thank you, Monica. As a kid, I read a ton of books. If you remember Matilda, the Roald Dahl book and the 1996 movie, I identified so much with her reading books to escape. I was eager to read and eager to learn. As years passed, between all the time I spent just coping with my mental health and then actually doing whatever else that I needed to do, I just stopped reading for fun. There's something sad about that, when reading absolutely defined the person that I am today and still has so much power to transform. I'm thinking now that I want to go back to it, maybe some other activities that I had as a kid. And so today, I'm talking about opening the door again to things that maybe we haven't done in a long time, or always wanted to do, but never stuck with. Specifically, I'm focusing on how I might talk myself through choosing what to do, finding the reason or motivation to do it, and abandoning this idea of determination. First, about what to do. I think it helps to give up on past projects and just let them go. At the same time, if we've got some serious unfinished business, maybe that's something to pay attention to too. The fun part, of course, is distinguishing which are things to cut loose and which are things to dive back into. I think, for instance, all the books in my to-be-read list on Goodreads, I'm just going to have to let go. It's too overwhelming, and also, I'm just not the person that I was at the time that I put all those books onto my list. It's letting go of old goals might be tough, though, for those of us who feel a kind of obligation or even some sense of failure. But I think there's some freedom in, metaphorically, cutting the past loose. Maybe it's helpful to think of even this process of culling old plans and old desires as practice. So this particular time it might be difficult, but the next time it will be easier. That said, if one of those old goals is still on my mind, and when I think about it, it feels in my body like it's something I actually want to do and not an obligation, unlike most things in life, it's not something that I'm dreading. If it feels like unfinished business, but in a juicy, delicious way, maybe it suggests to me that this is something to revisit. Second, about finding the reason or motivation. I think it helps to see it as investing in myself, and in my case, to go into it with more humility or being less prone to fantasy than I have in the past. As a kid, I imagined I was destined for greatness. Like, yes, I am suffering now, but one day I will be a famous writer and be interviewed by Oprah, and then all the people who were mean to me will know that they messed up. Clearly, there is a defense mechanism in there somewhere. I would never actually sit down to write, though, maybe because it was too overwhelming to write something that Oprah would think was great. This time around, with a little less active an imagination, maybe I can learn to do creative writing just for the process itself. I still wouldn't say no to honor and glory or vengeance upon my enemies, or at the very least, I still want to do things well. But what I think now is maybe it's worth learning a new skill. Not the thing that I want to do, like in this case, creative writing, but the skill of being able to manage my own thinking and emotions so that I can try something new and do it just for me. and actually enjoy it. That skill. If I can do that, then I can do it over and over again with different activities. Imagine being able to do that throughout a lifetime. That's a good life and an expansive one, and I can't say no to that. Third is about giving up on this idea of determination being necessary. When I'm learning something new, it obviously sucks to be so completely mediocre. It's a grind. And people talk about the ability to delay gratification as the difference between having grit or not. But having grit in that way was never an option for me. If something is satisfying in some way, then I can muster up the motivation to do it. If not, then I can't. I used to think that that was why I was kind of a failure, because of this impulse toward instant gratification. But I don't think that now. If I'm a person who responds well to immediate gratification, maybe that's what we make space for. Here's an example. For a few years, I journaled every day, sometimes multiple times every day, because it is simply what I had to do to regulate my emotions. I didn't have the time for it, but it's what I had to do to get by. It's also the first thing that I was ever able to do on a daily basis that was completely good for me. The reason I did it was not that it was good for me or good for my mental health. I did it over and over because it made me feel more settled, more relaxed. So there was a very specific physical sensation. My toes actually got less cold. So warm toes, apparently, is what I decided was worth the effort. I think that might be the way to go, to do the activity and to pay attention to how I feel in my body. Maybe I'll notice that there's a bit of relaxation or a bit more energy. Then that can be the focus, an effect that basically can be reproduced every time I do that activity. If I can press a button to make me feel better, of course I'm going to keep doing it. I'm going to keep pressing the button. So if then the activity becomes like pressing the button, it's not a problem at all to continue on and to keep with it. And then on the other hand, if the activity doesn't actually make me feel better, life is short. Maybe I can do something else. And so that's all I have. Can you think of some activity that you'd like to get back into? Can we focus on the process and the fact that learning to manage emotions or thoughts in that process will make it easier to try and learn other things? Can we plan for ourselves to be motivated by even instant gratification? I think I will give it a try. Thank you.
Thanks, Carrie. Certainly given us something to think about. Okay, our next speaker is Jenny. Jenny earned her Bachelor of Science from the University of Toronto and was a senior technical analyst in the IT field for 20 years, more than 20 years. She was injured on the job through sexual harassment and retaliation. Despite her severe injury, she fought and succeeded in many advocacy battles for 12 years, but her case has not yet been heard. The title of Jenny's speech is Climbing Another Mountain. Jenny?
Thanks. Climb another mountain, recovering from my PTSD. PTSD, what is it? It stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. It's a mental injury resulting from shocking, scary, and dangerous incidents. For me, it was the workplace harassment and the aftermath. Because of the injury, I spent 13 years, more than 1/3 of my working life, on disability leave. Everyone thought my career would just finish like that. 6 months ago, a miraculously opportunity came for me to return to work. My employer ceased the operation, sending all employees to a better workplace. The office I will be working from is in the same building from 13 years ago. I will do the same IT work, but the harassers are gone. It sounds perfect, don't you think so? But friends and families were worried. They bluntly put it to me that I would not last for 3 days before I dropped dead. I don't blame them. Few attempted returning to work, let alone succeeding after mental injuries. Stories of mistreatment of disabled employees after sick leave were not uncommon. I needed directions at that point, but found none. From my inquiries to occupational health and safety, they didn't have any. The Injured Workers Organization contacted the Workers' Safety and Insurance Board for me, which cited that few return to work after traumatic injuries, so the board did not have guidelines. It was clear to me that I had to DIY, or do it yourself, or in this case, it's to myself, or myself. I was adamant that complaint harassment should not end one's career. The challenge now becomes more meaningful. It's not just for me, but for others as well. If I pick one word to describe my first work day, it's intimidating. Even during my morning commuting, I sensed that the rush hour subway had a few look like me with a full head of silvery hair, smartly dressed and younger looking professionals with a cell phone in hand like a toy. Some were listening, some reading, texting, and playing games. Techno-savvy, no doubt. I became anxious, thinking, oh my, I would work, take training, and maybe even compete with those who could be at the age of my grandchildren. Oh my God. Working fast would not be an option for me. Mentally disabled, by definition, is taking 3 times longer to complete a mental task. Well, no worries, I comforted myself. There's workplace accommodation. Mental health conditions are not widely understood, so is the accommodations. Part of my work restrictions was to avoid sensory overstimulation. Not till I was at work did I realize the workplace could have more stimuli than blinking lights and constant noises. For example, switch from one computer screen to another, which we do constantly, made me dizzy and nauseated. Watching a recording played at an accelerated speed, I would lose my comprehension. Memory impairment is part of mental disability. During the first few days, I was introduced to so many people, such as coworkers, bosses, and clients. Their names came into my brain, but slipped out instantly without a trace. What? I don't remember a thing. I was scared. Even worse, compromised ability of facial recognition erased my impression that I had ever met them. I apologized constantly in advance, says, oh, I'm so sorry. I might react surprised next time to see you, to recognize you or recall your name or recollect our previous conversations. I remarked on it with ease. Sounds so smoothly, but deeper down, it hurt. Protecting my brain from re-injury, I felt like I was a mother cradled my tender infant in my arms, shielding it with my back from slashing and stoning. During the 6 months, I survived the numerous trainings and I succeeded with all work assignments. However, my real accomplishment was not from the technical part, in which I was trained at a younger age. In the first few days, I cramped learning to navigate the office floor. On the map, the office was divided into many zones, horizontally and vertically. It was a maze. Become disoriented is my symptom. I must learn to locate an unnoticeably marked workstation for safety among hundreds, and to find a conference room among dozens hidden in this maze. I must learn how to obtain the contact information of a particular person for help using the organization chart and reach it quickly. I set up my equipment and use software tools, many of them with proficiency. Nonetheless, others will be puzzled by the joy I felt in mastering these tasks, because everyone can do it easily. Disability disallows me from grasping what is trivial for others. Yes, big deal, they might think. That's I imaged. So I celebrate my achievement all by myself, completely alone. The harassment 13 years ago was in the same office building. The floors have great resemblance. Flashing back, memory shrank me instantly and transported me back to the years of hopelessness and helplessness. Fortunately, some of my new colleagues bonded with me quickly. We shared jokes, foods, and shopping tips. I thought it was fun. Others I met before, my older colleagues, reviewed their stories of harassment and suffering. Yet, still are some scared and kept a distance. Many years in advocating and leadership equipped me well. My focus was not on making friends or seeking acceptance, but rather on increased awareness of mental health and preventing workplace harassment. Complaint harassment should not end anyone's careers. A new concept brings hope. The federal government published a guideline on clearing the aftermath, restoring the workplace following a harassment complaint. It said, return to work with a disability is strenuous like climbing a mountain. Yet I made a tremendous improvement in a safe environment. The gradual increase in attendance ensured breathing time. In a manageable dose, using memory improves it. My energy level is higher and I'm productive in IT work. I hope my experience brings hope to you and to many others. If an injured person feels ready and decides to return to work, he and she should be accommodated to try. Even with disability, we can still show our strengths to earn an income and to live the life we choose. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jenny. Kind of reminded me a little bit of when I first started working in downtown Toronto and having to navigate the path down there. Anyway, I'd call into the office, I'm lost. And they'd say, well, just look for an Aroma coffee bar on the corner and then turn left. Well, you want to know how many Aroma coffee bars are in the paths in downtown Toronto? Just so reminded me a little bit about that, just navigating your way through a place that's very complicated. All right, our next speaker is Merle. Merle is a retired provincial public servant and freelance writer. She has volunteered with Hope and Me for 4 years in various capacities, including on the TIPS Warm Line, co-facilitating the Hope and Me support group for people with anxiety and depression, and giving presentations to patients at Humber River Hospital. The title of Merle's speech tonight is A Common Language. Merle?
Thank you. Before the pandemic, my mother-in-law taught me Mahjong or Maj. It's a game where white plastic tiles are passed back and forth between players to create a winning combination. Much like life, it's a game of luck and skill. You never know what you're going to be dealt with and how to recover from a lousy hand. And then there are the times that you get just what you need to carry on. Around that time, I hit rock bottom, whatever that means. I felt I had nothing to live for and couldn't see any way forward. My boss was threatening to fire me. My kids left home. And I found out that my mother likely had bipolar disorder when I was growing up. The emotional anguish felt like brown crud lodged in my chest that I just couldn't clear out. The depression and anxiety set on my shoulders and weighed me down. I sunk lower and lower through deep self-hatred and comparing myself to other people. I was never good enough. I crawled my way to recovery over a 3-year period. Tonight, I'll talk about what I worked with in my hand of life. I will also take you through a typical Maj game. My hope is that you'll find a nugget in tonight that you can make your own. 4 of us play online from 7 to 9 every Monday night. My husband's 2 cousins, my mother-in-law, she's 87, and me from Toronto. We are committed to these games and the chance to connect. The first hour is for sharing. Hope, who lives in Florida, always asks, "So what's new, girls?" in her New Jersey accent. At 8 p.m., we sign in to Real Mahjong Online to begin the game and passing our tiles. The winning tile patterns change from year to year because to make the game more challenging. Over the course of the night, each player will match the combinations on the card. We all start with 13 tiles. The hard plastic tiles, create certainty when in thinking about what we don't have control over. There's quite a bit of chatter going on back and forth, complaining about the tiles we wish we had but don't. Then the conversation dies down and the game begins. I'll take you through a little bit of what a game sounds like in terms of the banter. "It's your turn to pick up," says my mother-in-law, Lorraine. "I've nothing to work with here, nada," I say. "Can't you give me something I need?" says my mother-in-law. "Tell me what you need and I'll help you," I say. "Yeah, right," she says. Miriam is a psychotherapist and always offers her support. "I know what you mean," she says. "It's Hope's turn to pick and throw." "Well, I just don't know," she says in frustration. "I hear you. I know what you mean," says Miriam. "I'm not having any luck today. I'm just not winning," says Lorraine. Miriam says, "But that's good because then you still have a way to go and you can keep trying." Hope throws out a 9 bam, the tile that Lorraine needs. "That's just what I needed." "That's great. That's what you were waiting for," says Miriam. "There's much more that I was waiting for," says my mother-in-law. "It's just too soon for me to pick the combination that I'm going to work on," I say. "I bet that's true," says Miriam. I feel the excitement building as my hand starts to materialize. Then I throw out a tile that my mother-in-law needs. "I was afraid of that," I say. "Mahjong," announces the computer program. My mother-in-law wins. "Let's play again," says Miriam. Miriam, Hope, and my mother-in-law and I met in Florida, in Tampa, last November. We hunted in thrift shops, went out for dinner, and even survived a hurricane that was there. We had to stay inside all day. I'm not the best Mahjong player, but if I win one game a night, I'm good with that. Lately, I'm not winning so much, but on the surface, our weekly virtual Mahjong games are all about winning and losing, but there's much more to it than that. It unites us in a common language. It's also about preserving and exercising fading minds and creating new memories. Mahjong is just one thing that helped me. There are many more. For example, I've been on so many medications, I can't remember them all. And they work for a while and then have to find something new. Cognitive behavioral therapy has really helped me to write down my negative thoughts and reframe them. I also have a workbook that I did. And I have workbooks on dialectical behavior therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy that are based on CBT, but with something else added. And I have a folder with the different sayings and exercises that I found helpful in CBT, DBT, and ACT. And when I start to feel like I'm going downhill, I pull up my folder and I can find things that resonate. I've also done mindfulness meditation. I've taken 2 9-week courses, and I'm still not great at it, but that's part of mindfulness, isn't it? It's supposed to be like you're doing it for the first time all the time. I also exercise. I journal. I also feel it's really important to connect with others. I have some really good friends, and my family is very supportive. I've been to group therapy and lots of individual therapy with some therapists that were helpful and some not so helpful. Seizing opportunities that present themselves and doing just what's in front of me without becoming overwhelmed is part of a recipe that's worked for me. I still have days where the emotional pain is thick and I want to curl up in a ball and not go anywhere, and I'm afraid I'll get really sick again. My psychiatrist tells me that my full-time job is to get better and stay better. I believe him. I still have this bad habit of taking on too much and overwhelming myself. But now I know it's actually it's actually possible to recover. Playing Maj has connected me to a welcoming circle of older women and helped me overcome major depression and anxiety. Perfecting verbal banter means you are an accepted part of the group. What I really learned was how to move forward positively through old age. My mother-in-law believed in me and said I'd catch on, and she was right. My parting message to you is, if you can't find something that works, that's okay. Just try something different. There's a lot out there to try. Thank you.
Thank you, Merle. I'm feeling kind of inspired by your words tonight. So we're open now for questions and answers. So if you have any questions for any of the panelists, or even for me, just please feel free to click on the Q&A icon at the bottom of your screen and write out your questions. While people are thinking of what they might want to ask, I do have a couple of questions of my own that I wanted to ask the panelists. For Carrie, are you doing any writing at all now? Any journaling?
Thanks for the question. I currently am not. I am trying to get back into it. I think for me, it's like I want to like read new materials on it, and then that will be my like lower threshold of what's required of me, and then try to get back into it that way. So that's my intermediate step. Maybe I'm just giving myself a roundabout way of doing it.
Okay, that's fair. We do have a question that came in. Somebody is asking if we have any advice on how to find a helpful therapist. I mean, in my own experience, I've had to experiment, try different people until I did find one. I don't know if anyone else has. I see some people nodding their heads. Is anybody else who's finally found somebody they can work with want to give a bit of background on how that happened?
This is Jenny. I can say something about it. I think for myself, it was easy. The first psychologist I met, I just hit and it worked. And for many years, it was really great relationship. But I also tried to find a psychologist for my family member, which take years. And the thing is that it's hard. You have to feel comfortable and have a bond. So the only way I think is that keep on trying. Of course, you can scan through if and with certain criteria like ethnicity, language, speak, background information, how they charge, and what's the experience, and if they are working in a hospital environment or in their own clinic. And but the final click is that you have to attend a few sessions and to see if you feel comfortable and you feel like you open up with that person. So yeah, that's the things that most difficult, and then you can only do it on your own by yourself.
I agree. Merle, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I was going to echo what Jenny said. It's hard, and really it is trial and error, unless a couple of times I had a recommendation from somebody. It was a word of mouth recommendation, but I mean, there's a list of trained psychologists, and really, it's like, think of you interviewing them and trying to find the best one.
Thank you. Carrie, you're going to also contribute? Okay.
I just wanted to say briefly, and yeah, I agree with all those thoughts. Those are great. I wanted to add that I think if it's necessary to take a break in between, there's no pressure to get back into it immediately. I think when something doesn't work out, it can be kind of disappointing. And yeah, for me, recognizing that there's no pressure and you can do your homework to figure out who the next person or next place to try might be. I want to acknowledge too that there is definitely like an economic element to it. That certainly if there are more financial resources available, that we can try more different types of options. But I think that the other thing is that it's also half the battle is about navigating the mental health system. And sometimes it's about reaching out, and it's hard to know all the ins and outs of the system when you're like maybe not as involved as some of the people who are working in the system. So I think what I didn't know but would have been helpful is that you can even reach out to organizations, and wasn't intended as an advertisement, but if you reach out to Hope and Me or other organizations, that there are people there who can help point you in the right direction or some possible leads for what options there are available to you. And they just might have a better sense for maybe what directories to check based on one's economic situation or whatever needs. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to have to say that I think that's one of the big gaps that we have in our mental health system. It's extremely difficult to find a good therapist. I know I've had difficulty myself. My doctor recommended somebody who was so terrible that I hung up on her halfway through and just said, I cannot continue to speak to this person. And then I spent 3 years with somebody who I clicked with immediately. So, but it is very, very challenging. So I guess what we're all saying is you kind of have to pursue it on your own until you find somebody that you can talk to. Anyway, since Carrie was just talking, there's a question for you. How much has pursuing social work helped you with your mental health journey? What has improved due to pursuing what The guy asking the question, what he assumes is a new path. First, I wonder if you could tell us, is it a new path for you? And then how much has it helped you improve?
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yes, it is a new path. The new path was specifically to like become a therapist in some shape or form, and so that was the career change for me. And then getting into social work was another step along that. But basically, yes. Um, what was the question again, Monica? I've lost.
How has pursuing a new path and going into social work helped you with your own mental health? I'm assuming that's what the person is asking. Yeah.
I think on a very practical level, there was because I needed to change my situation like so drastically. I think there were a lot of there's risk taking and also doing things that are quite different from what I was doing previously. Even though like it seems that going back to school, it seems like it would be at a like the expectations are less, if that makes sense, compared to working. But I think it was challenging in all sorts of different ways. And so at every stage, the gap between where I was with my own coping skills and my daily routines and stuff, needing to step that up in order to go back to school and then also go back to school and have placement on the side, like so working, that in itself, because like it was kind of like incremental challenges for myself, it made me have to step up my game in terms of coping skills and life skills and all that. And then of course, like, I won't talk too long, but and also then, like some of my mental health stuff has been about like dealing with isolation or like what I perceive as rejection and things like that. And inevitably, when you're working towards like working on clinical skills and working with people on one-on-one, it brings up certain things. It brings up certain emotions or whatever. And that, I think, were like social challenges for me to learn to navigate and maybe think about it in a different way. And so it was hopeful that as well. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Carrie. Okay. There's a question for me, actually. Somebody would like me to share a little bit about my experiences with my family, managing depression and suicide watch and living with a family member with bipolar. So first thing to say is that I was a journalist for 30 years. So first thing that I do when I'm faced with anything unknown, I do my research. And I did a tremendous amount of reading into what is bipolar disorder, how does it manifest, how to manage it, and etc. I discovered my husband was bipolar shortly after we were married, just when we got back from the honeymoon. And anyone who has a mental health issue will know when I asked him why he hadn't told me, he said, well, you wouldn't have married me. And he may have been right. But I did marry him and I stayed married to him for 25 years. And what I did was, once I knew what it was all about, I just monitored his behavior. And as soon as I saw that he was starting to perhaps begin to move into a manic phase, I would call his doctor. We'd make an appointment and his doctor would talk to him and increase his medication. And I just went with the flow of it. I just was as supportive as possible. I just tried to maintain as much stability as possible for the other members of the household. And I just, frankly, just love and support can go a long way to helping manage mental health issues. My daughters, both of them had eating disorders. Both of them have anxiety and depression. One of them became quite a serious drug addict. Both of them are doing quite well now. And essentially what I did was I just maintained a very strong social network, supporting myself so that I had an outlets for myself. I did a lot of exercise. I just made sure I surrounded myself with supportive friends. And then, as I said in my introduction, I held on to those golden nuggets, because no matter how bad things are, there are those moments of hope and those moments of love and of togetherness. And I just held on to those and just kept going. I will say it wasn't easy, of course, but it's been 10 years now, and my daughters are doing well. My husband unfortunately passed away a couple of years ago, but we had a very strong, very happy marriage for those 25 years. I always tell the joke that, how marriages have ups and downs. Well, ours really had ups and downs. But we survived it. And I guess it just was a matter of accepting that was how my life was going to be, and to not despair. But he was doing the best he could. And so then I did the best I could. And that's how we made it. I hope that helps. Okay. We have a couple of other questions. For Merle, what do you do if you overcommit to activity?
Yeah, I have a very bad habit of doing that, and just doing what I think other people want and not thinking about what I want. And there's usually somewhere in between. But I never really started to think about what I wanted for the longest time. And then I didn't know about that. So a couple of things. I went through an exercise where I looked at what my values were, and, what are the things that I value? And then, for example, friendship. So if a friend invites me out, I'm going to say yes. But if there's somebody that I don't have the energy to talk to at a particular time, I'm going to say not now, because a lot of it for me is about energy and how much energy I have and how it gets used up. I also I used to run around like crazy. My husband called me a schlepper because I was always carrying all these bags and trying to do all these things during the day. And I guess as I've gotten older, I asked myself, did I really have to do that? And what did I get out of that? What am I getting out of that? And just, as I get older, it's easier for me to step back and try to set realistic goals for myself. If I set a goal, it's usually too much. So then I try and scale it back and think about, okay, well, what's just a small thing I can start with? What's one thing I can do so as not to overwhelm myself? So I'll stop there. Thank you for your question.
Thanks, Merle. We have a question also for Jenny. Somebody would like to ask you if you feel your PTSD is healed. This attendee also has it, and feeling inspired by your talk, says that she was not successful in getting back into the workplace. So wants you to talk a little bit more about that.
Okay, thank you for the question. Actually, I think, and I said in my speech, it was a miraculous opportunity, because it's so unusual, and my experience can only happen in a safe work environment, and this is not well known yet. I'm happy the federal government started realizing this and doing some work, and there's other research, because most of the people, when they injured with PTSD, are from work harassment, and when they go back, it's extremely awkward, and they are given opportunity at the best is to leave. Severance, get out, and it's the money is pittance. It's completely unfair, in my opinion. And I always say my human rights and the dignity is not for sale. Even you give me $1 million, I want it to be acknowledged first. And so this, but this also reveal a problem that the work environment, like I said, it's not safe still for those injured before. And also, even in my case, the accommodation is not clear what you need or what should be done. Even myself, I thought as long as there's no blinking lights and no one talks next to me all the time, I'm fine. I don't need anything. I'm living my life. But then I found that, oh my God, it was overwhelming. It's so my work is that I'm going to give my speech to anyone interested in organization, government, or whoever, to an occupational therapist and professional, to tell them this is there's a gap. They don't understand. We don't understand. And I'm going to give to my psychologist and a psychiatrist that says, hey, we got some work to do. And hopefully it would help others for sure. And in the meantime, everyone has the experience and need help. Please voice your concern and increase awareness in any channel, through any channel, whatever chance you have. I always say, I was injured. I don't have any stigma on me. You are ashamed that you injured me. Shame on you, not me. So I kept my thick skin to go on. Of course, it hurts. Like what I said, I feel like a mother cradle my infant, tender infant in my arms, and but I'm determined. It's not my fault. I have to work, keep on going on that, and I hope everyone do the same work. But keep yourself safe. That's number one priority. Hope it helps.
Thanks, Jenny. You're an incredible advocate, really, and so passionate.
Thank you.
Incredible. So there is another, not exactly a question, but a member of the audience noted that they were referred to an excellent psychotherapist by the Ontario Psychotherapy and Counseling Referral Directory and has included the link. I'm going to see if so Madeline can put that into the chat, and she can then so everybody can have access to it. All right, and I'm not sure if there's any other questions. I did have a couple of more for myself that I want to know. I wanted to ask Merle, you had all kinds of different strategies that you use to help you with your mental health. You mentioned, medication, mindfulness, exercise, journaling. But I wanted to know, how important do you think the social connection that you had from playing Maj helped you in your recovery? How important was that comparatively?
It was very helpful because when I first started, I was off work. I was off work for 2.5 years. And it was kind of my only connection. Like I wasn't really getting together with friends very much. And so that became really important to me. And my mother-in-law, they didn't know I wasn't working. I was pretending that I was working because I didn't want them to know. So yeah, that was really important. And my mother-in-law is a very positive person. She's, she runs up against a challenge and she just finds a way around it. So that's been so helpful. I really admire her. So yeah, so that was really, really important.
Okay. That's great. And I do have a question for Jenny. I've heard your speech a couple of times, but I want to know, how did you feel? Like what went through your head when somebody first reached out to you to offer for you to go back to work?
Remember, I had a speech on cardinal birds, right? I said, "Oh, my cardinal came back." I said, "That's a good sign." I was overjoyed before I got scared, but I said, "Oh, it's a gift." Thank you.
So happy and then scared.
Yeah, then quickly it turned to, oh my God, what am I going to do? Are they going to kill me or something? But lucky it was a two different workplace. Otherwise, I think it won't work. Probably won't work.
Yeah, but after 12 years, it must have just been an incredible feeling to have somebody reach out to you and offer you to go back.
Yes,
Yeah.
it was. It was. I just kept saying, "Oh, thank God, it's a miracle. I can't believe it."
Wow. I can't even imagine. So I'm going to thank everybody for joining us. Please fill out our survey and please sign up for our newsletter so we can make you aware for future webinars such as this. The survey link will be included in the follow-up email that we'll be sending to all of you. We look forward to hearing your feedback and hopefully doing this again. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night.